Me in my cocoon last night, right? And I have no idea what's going on. I'm not really paying attention to X. I'm spending more time watching the Lakers. I'm chilling with my kids, you know what I'm saying? Just doing the normal dad thing, right? And I see this one tweet and I'm like, wait, what? And what was it? And it says, I watched and listened from afar as you, Cam Newton, talked about the Panthers. None of us are perfect. Yes, we were 2-14 before you blessed us with your presence. The way you have talked about the Panthers lately, I'm very disappointed. I wish you nothing but the very best. I'm done. And I was like, what is going on? What in the world is going on? Shocked. Right? Super shocked. Hey, Nakari, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. Shocked to say the least. So then I start doing digging. I start going through and trying to find out, okay, where did this come from? What happened? And then I remember, like, you know what? I saw that clip the other day. And I didn't really, I mean, it was one of those things I saw and it was in passing. I was just like, I didn't really think anything of it, because the one thing I will say about Cam is this. I don't think Cam oftentimes means things from a malicious perspective, right? But I do think that he is not the best orator, right? And he's getting better with it, much better. I think the version of Cam that we see on 4th and 1, the version we see on his podcast, is the more authentic him, where he can kind of speak freely, right? But whenever he has to kind of hold back and be more PC with his takes, sometimes certain things will slip, and he's not necessarily saying it from a malicious perspective, but it just comes out, it may sound that way, right? If that makes sense. I think we all know people like that if you put them in front of a more quote unquote corporate situation, like when Cam is on First Take versus when I hear Cam on 4th and 1, couldn't be more different, right? And I think this was one of those situations, because even on Trav's podcast, like, you still had to be a little bit careful, because, there's certain regulations. Like, you can't say certain, like, not that you can't have certain takes, but you can't say certain words with those takes, right? Like the cussing and stuff like that, you're bleeping a lot of that stuff out, right? So, like I said, I did my digging. What did I come up with? Came up with the clip. And I wanted to see and listen to, and we're going to do this. We're going to listen to and react. So look, I'm one of those people. Yes, I pause in between, the commentary, and I do speed it up a little bit just so I don't get clipped, copyrighted, or whatever. So just bear with me. But we're gonna go through this, because this is the entire clip in context, and we're gonna see, because one of the arguments that I've been seeing people make is like, because I like I said, over the last 10, 15 hours, I have been doing nothing but reading comments and listening to different people's takes on this to see, all right, am I being unbiased? One, and two, is the context really there for us to be like, hey, he didn't mean it in a certain way, or did he really just mean what he said and just, it is what it is, right? So we gonna allow the context to be the context from the full clip itself. Let's get to it.
How did you handle the pressure of being the top pick?
Well, first, let me do this. If y'all can hear this in the chat, type a 1. Somebody type a 1 real quick, and just let me know that y'all can hear the audio from the video.
Let's put it in perspective. You're the top.
All right. I'm going to wait for y'all for a second, because I just want to make sure that y'all can hear it. Somebody type a 1 in the chat. Just hit me with a 1 real quick. I just want to make sure y'all can hear the audio, because I don't want to go deep into this commentary. I've done this before, where I've gone deep into a commentary and, the whole thing was trash because you couldn't hear anything that was going on. So, yeah, just give me a 1 in the comment, or yes, or whatever, and then I'll keep going. I'll wait for somebody. Bet. 1 in the comment. Let's go.
Pick. Because what?
Start it over again.
Let's put it in perspective.
How did you handle the pressure of being the top pick?
Well, let's put it in perspective. You're the top pick because what?
We play.
No. You're looking at it from a personal situation. I'm talking about from the professional situation.
All right, right there. Let's stop. Remember what I talked about already about context, right? Or excuse me, oration. I didn't ask you that. I didn't ask you about the organization. Travis answered it right. Hey, look, your play is what got you to the top pick. You're already going towards the Panthers, which tells me one thing in particular, right? Cam and the Panthers have some issues. We know that. I mean, that's not something that we have to necessarily dig to find like a real answer on, right? Or to find, because we've heard it, right? But you immediately go to that before you even answer the question about you and the pressure for you being a top pick, regardless of the organization that you fell to or that you happen to get drafted by, that fell to you, that had a terrible season, that got to the point where they picked you, right? It was because of your play. Let's keep going.
You're the top pick because that was the worst team in the NFL the year before. You see what I'm saying?
Fact.
So for me, it wasn't just I wanted to be the number one pick, yes, but understanding like, yo, if I'm going to the worst team, our guys in the locker room ready to win right now. What Jaden Daniels did as the number 2 pick last year, that's not normal.
Yeah, that's not normal.
You see what I'm saying? CJ Stroud, that's not normal. And those are quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
You could potentially be the first pick, but bro, you have no way of impacting the game like a quarterback does. Right.
That's a fact. It's not normal. What I will say, though, is that it speaks more to what those guys are as players than the circumstance itself, right? Here's what I could do. I could say, well, they did get a defensive coordinator coach that was just on a Super Bowl team. They didn't win the bowl, but he was on there. They did bring in some players. They drafted really, really well. They came and double-dipped in the first round, drafting C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson, right? Shoring up your defense. And they did have some pieces there, right? They had a few pieces. They had Laramie Tunsil, a great left tackle, right? And also, if we're just being real, they had a division that was very, it wasn't like the best division on earth, right? So some of those wins came by way of like, man, we just got better players at the right time, right? Or you go to the Jaden Daniels situation. They brought in Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Jeremy Chin. They bring in a Super Bowl winning, Super Bowl been to defensive coordinator, and a defensive coordinator on the team that had just previously went 12-5 or 12-4, 12-5, I should say, 3 straight years in a row in Dan Quinn, right? So it's not as if you didn't bring in, like the situations helped, right? Or we can go to one like Andrew Luck, for example. Andrew Luck gets drafted to a team that's 2-14. Very similar situation, by the way, right? What were they the previous years? Because that's important. To me, on Smitty's side of his argument, that's part of the context. It's like, what were we prior? It's okay to look at what we were the year that we got you because of circumstance, right? What was the circumstance? Jake Delhomme, granted, had a terrible showing against Arizona. And we're going to break that down in a second. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep listening first because I'm going to really deep dive that point in just a moment.
You can lock down the number 1 receiver. You can make impact plays on offense all you want, but it's still not like a quarterback. My issue is when I was the first pick, I went into a locker room of losers. Just honest. Like, guys didn't know how to win. Guys didn't know how to prepare. They didn't take themselves serious to realize, like, yo, we was 2-14. There was a lot of 2-14s in the mentality of those guys. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like, bro, the 3 years that I was in college, I won a national championship at the University of Florida, had to transfer, went to JUCO, won a national championship there, went to Auburn for 1 year, won a national championship there. Then I left and went to the NFL, and you're trying to put me in a 2-14 situation? Like, no, bro, I want to win yesterday. I'm here.
All right. So this is where I'm split. Because on one hand, I agree with Cam. I'm coming to a terrible situation. And I do feel like sometimes, like, I really wish Cam could see himself the way that everybody else sees him. Like, I remember hearing a commentary one time about Eminem. And, Jay-Z dropped the album 444. I'm sure y'all are familiar with it. Where it was like, he was just talking about a lot of life stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody win when the family feuds. Story of OJ. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. It was kind of one of those, like, grown-up rap albums where you're just talking about life stuff, right? What has Jay-Z never really done since he, got to this point in his career? Outside of the song that he did, I Got the Keys, and really that was only just because he was shooting back at Drake. I've never really had to tell you how great I was, right? You know what I'm saying? Like and it's unfortunate because the league doesn't necessarily get, or the media, I guess you should say, from his perspective, doesn't give him the kind of love that he feels like he has earned, right? Because he has. Through the lens of the Carolina Panther fans, of course, he's earned that, right? But, like, I don't necessarily need for you to know that. You know what I'm saying? Like Eminem, rap god. I'm going to basically just tell you how great I am as a lyricist, how well I can rap and everything. It's just like, bro, have you, like, what are you going on? What's going on in your life right now? You know what I'm saying? Like, we want to know about that. Like, tell us a little bit more about, and of course, when you get to, like, recovery and stuff like that, like, he sort of does that. And then, like, what was the album he dropped? Oh gosh, I can't remember. But you start to get a little bit more of that because I think he's hearing the fans say like, yo, we want to hear more about what you got going on, right? So this latest album, that he dropped, Death of Slim Shady, you started to get a lot of that, right? And he went back to what his core was because that's what, people loved him for, right? And that was a much better effort than, hearing you, wrap circles around people because we know you can do that, right? I don't necessarily need to hear that, right? So that's one thing for his side. The other side is this, though. Yeah, we picked you. We're a 2-14 team. We would hope that something that you have done so great in all those spots that you just mentioned, Blinn Junior College, Florida before that, you know what I'm saying? Auburn, high school, all those championships you won there. We would hope that some of that would rub off on us, right? You bring in that mentality here to us because we want to be great here. That's why we picked you. You know what I'm saying? So like to come into a situation, I can understand if you sitting next to guys and like you got dudes in the locker room talking about like Cancun and all that kind of stuff, like, and you don't want to have that mentality, right? But part of what you're brought in here to do is become that force multiplier, not just on the field, which is why I've always had a pushback about this whole game manager versus game changer argument, right? Tom Brady said it himself. There is no better honor that you could give a quarterback than to be called a game manager. Why? Because I'm managing the game. I'm not just managing the game. I'm managing personalities, man. I watched Jalen Hurts on the sideline earlier this year. Look, people look at the situation with A.J. Brown and seeing the book on the sideline. That was hardly the first time that this kind of stuff has happened. Man, when he was in the media, that same game where he was in the media and they asked him, hey, what's wrong with this team? Passing. That's what he said. That's a shot directly at Hurts. And who called him out about it? Brandon Graham, who just came back. Now he a hero. Hey, I've been on the Super Bowl championship team, bro. What are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, you need to chill out, right? And he had to come out and apologize about it, but he meant what he said. Why? You got Jalen Hurts on the sideline trying to calm you. Hey, fam, look, it's going to be all right. I'm coming to you. I promise you. Managing, not just the game, managing them personalities too. That's part of it, right? So we know you can be great. We saw Jalen's greatness. You know what I'm saying? We saw it, right? Jalen, like, not for nothing. I know that people got Jalen messed up, bro, for real. But the point is this. If you're managing the game, you're also managing personalities, right? So yeah, when we bring you in to a 2-14 situation, we're hoping that some of that can rub off on us, right? And it did. You lifted the team from 2-14 to 6-10. It worked. It didn't work necessarily right away in your favor, but at the same time, what you brought to the table helps cultivate this so that it can work in later years as it did. So I understand Smitty's point, and I get how Cam could feel like, yo, man, I'm coming. I don't want that loser stuff. Get out of here with that. I'm not trying to hear that. I know y'all probably talking in the chat like crazy. I haven't listened or looked at it yet, so I'll get to it in a moment.
Here to win. I'm here to win Super Bowls. So when your intensity is like that, and you talking to a cat that's like, man, I can't wait to go to Miami. Huh? Miami? Huh? What are we doing? You know what I'm saying? Like we all, it was a culture shock for me, because the games don't mean a lot to a lot of people in the league like you would expect. It's just money. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody has capabilities to be impact players. Yeah. They're just players. Yeah. So realize.
See, and that's, to me, that's one of the things right there. Right. Not everybody has the ability to be an impact player. They're just players. But to me, mentality, and he's kind of saying that here, and maybe that's what he's really trying to say, because it sounds like you're talking more about ability and not necessarily mentality, right? But maybe you're talking about both. But to me, when you look at a guy like Zach Bond, right? I was a rotational, like, edge player, situational pass rusher in New Orleans. And I go to a situation where coaching is much different because they're not pursuing, they're not chasing, man. And that's where I hope that Carolina eventually gets to. I hope that that's part of what comes out of all of this. No more pursuit, right? In the wrong direction. Trying to find the core position so that you can build out everything else. Now we got core beliefs. We just building on top of it. That's what they got in Philly. Philly been riding off that first Super Bowl win since it happened. That's how they was able to get back twice and win one. That's how they've been able to have 10-win consecutive seasons. That's how they was able to pay a quarterback multiple millions of dollars and still draft Jalen Hurts in the second round. And then he ended up replacing that guy, right? Because we've been riding off the high because we saw it. I saw what it takes. GM saw what it takes to get to this point, and I'm going to bring in people that can fit that bill. And if you can't, you're out of here. They flipped the entire secondary. People were older. Contracts came up. They get Quinyon and Cooper DeJean, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and they kept an old dog, Darius Slay. Flipped the whole thing, right? That's what you love to see. I love to see that. Some of these guys are not the super talented guys. They're not the super impact players. Some of them are just players. Zach Bond was just a player. But when he got to Philly, they recognized like, yo, man, you see what he just did? Similar to how we waxed poetic about Abdul Carter. He did the same thing. Zach Bond was statistically the best middle linebacker. He got robbed for Defensive Player of the Year this year. Right? Abdul Carter. Go look at his stats as an off-ball linebacker the past couple of years. He was okay. He wasn't even in the conversation. Coming into this season, who was the number one edge rusher? People thought that James Pierce could go number one overall. Boy, it's funny how them tables turn. A year can change everything. Cam knows that all too well. Look at what he did at Auburn, right? Look at what he did from 2014 to 2015, 7-8-1 to 15-1, right? Sometimes you need those just player guys that can elevate their level of play. Kurt Coleman wasn't no superstar until he got to Carolina. He was good. 7 picks good? Nah. Let's keep going.
Realizing that, transitioning that, how can I still keep myself going in a room full of mediocre players that just like, they just happy to be on the team? You know what I'm saying?
Okay,
Yeah, no,
I got something I want to add on that, because you hit on a lot of points, interesting points that a lot of people don't look at from the outside lens. And your path, like I said, man, you winning at the highest level. Florida, winning. Blinn, winning.
Right.
Auburn, winning. Go to Carolina, they had just finished losing, right?
Right.
How do you think that impacts, like with Trav being what he's been going to, a Jackson State and turning that thing up, then having to go to a Colorado, being 1-11, and who knows, Lord knows when the last time they won before they got there,
Right.
and him helping turn that around. How does that think that prepare and help him for what he's about to step into
Okay.
versus your route?
And that's a great question. And I'll tell you this way. How long were you at Collins Hill?
4 years.
You was a ninth grader at Collins Hill.
Not great, yeah.
Okay. So this is your next opportunity that you will be there probably longer than 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it that way.
Okay.
You was at Jackson State how many years?
1.
You was at Colorado for how many?
2.
2, right? So that's 3 years. This franchise that you're about to go to, you will be there, God willing, right? You'll be there for more than 4 to 5 years. How do you understand your growth as a person and as a player?
All right. So they don't really go – pretty much the meat and potatoes of this is over at this point. But I do want to just circle back real quick to the point in contention.
How did you handle the pressure of being the top pick?
Well, let's put it in perspective. You're the top pick because what?
We play.
No. You're looking at it from a personal situation. I'm talking about from the professional situation. You're the top pick because that was the worst team in the NFL the year before.
Bingo.
You see what I'm saying? So for me, it wasn't just I wanted to be the number one pick, yes, but understanding like, yo, if I'm going to the worst team, our guys in the locker room ready to win right now. What Jaden Daniels did as the number 2 pick last year, that's not normal.
Yeah, it's not normal.
You see what I'm saying? CJ Stroud, that's not normal. And those are quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
You could potentially be the first pick, but bro, you have no way of impacting the game like a quarterback does.
Right.
You can lock down the number 1 receiver, you can make impact plays on offense all you want, but it's still not like a quarterback. My issue is when I was the first pick, I went into a locker room of losers. Just honest, like guys didn't know how to win. Guys didn't know how to prepare. They didn't take themselves serious to realize like, yo, we was 2-14. There was a lot of 2-14 in the mentality of those guys. You know.
All right. Now back to it. Okay. Caleb said it. Cam leaves too much up to interpretation in his comments, and I think that's where that's where people got lost. So the context is the context. The clip was the clip. I know a lot of people tried to say, well, it's a viral clip because the way people tried to frame it up, the people that came to me with it was like, yo, they sliced up this, and this, and then he said that, and they kind of put that in there and made that the highlight so it would kind of draw more attention. Nah, the clip was the clip. All they did was cut they cut 10, 15 seconds out of it and made that whole conversation, but that portion of it, the clip. And that's what I think when Smitty, Charles Johnson, and all these other people that saw it, that's where they got stuck. And they was like, wait, what? Full of losers? Huh? So now I want to look at it from Smitty's perspective. Let's go back to Smitty's tweet real quick. I'm actually answer a few comments first, or talk about a few comments first. So What's Up Doug said, this is the only thing I'll say about Smitty and Cam relationship has been on the rocks for years. We know Cam has a strong ego. Some people don't like it. Smitty and Cam are both alpha males. I couldn't agree more, right? Caleb Dixon said, I don't necessarily agree every game-managing quarterback is not the leader like Hurts to manage personalities, especially with the coach he has. Good point. And that was that. John Morales said Cam never really answers the question. I would agree with that. Because from the very beginning, he wasn't asking him, hey, man, how tough was it to go to an organization that was 2-14? He asked him, how tough was it for you to acclimate yourself to the NFL being the number 1 overall pick because of the pressures that come with that? And Cam, I'm not saying he deflected there, but he didn't necessarily answer it in the way that it was asked, right? But again, like we said, not necessarily the best in oration, but still very valuable information nonetheless, right? So let's go back to Smitty's tweet. Smitty said, I've watched and listened from afar as you, Cameron Newton, talk about the Panthers. Hey, look, Smitty had time today, boy. None of us are perfect. Yes, we were 2-14. Before you blessed us with your presence. The way you have talked about the Panthers lately, I'm very disappointed. I wish you nothing but the very best. Psych. No, I'm just playing. Anyway, make sure y'all smash that like button. We got 70 people watching between 2 platforms. We got 21 likes. Smash the like button for you, boy. Appreciate it. All right, back to it. So I thought to myself when I saw that tweet, I was like, you know what? What could Smitty's perspective really be on this? How could he really view this? If, you just said all those things. Were we really that much of a losing situation, a losing mentality, or was this more of an anomaly? Sort of like I said, like Andrew Luck going into the Colts, right? The Colts identified early, we're not going to have Peyton Manning. He's got neck issues, right? We got to get him out of here. We're going to have the number 1 pick. Andrew Luck, who was by most estimations supposed to come out the previous year, but didn't. Could you say that that's because of the Panthers? Possibly. Who knows? Now, personally, I'm glad we drafted Cam Newton because I much more enjoyed his version of, number 1 pick play than I would have Andrew Luck, even though Andrew Luck could have had just as equal, possibly more success. Who knows, right? Even though early on, it was more successful. Seeing how you go from a 2-14 team that literally flips over to a AFC championship team in the Deflategate game in 1 year. So, yeah, do with that what you will. But when we look at this from a past perspective, what could Smitty say and make an argument for through his eyes and through his lens and from his perspective? Let's take a look. So if we go to the Carolina Panthers, let's start back, I would say at the Super Bowl season, 2003, right? So we go 11-5 and lost the Super Bowl to New England. The next season we go 7-9, and I think we lost Smitty, if I'm not mistaken. Following season, we're back in the conference championship again. So that's 2 NFC championship appearances in 3 years. And we go 11-5. And Smitty wins the Triple Crown. And we have the walk-off against St. Louis. All that greatness. The next year we go 500, then a game under 500. And this is when Jake started having his Tommy John issues, right? People remember that. And then we come back and go 12-4. I remember great season, magical season, 2 1,000-yard rushing backs. We had a lot of great moments in that season too. Dante Rosario's walk-off touchdown against the Chargers in week 1. Jonathan Stewart, I think Rondé Barber's jersey's still up under the stadium. You know what I'm saying? From him face planting him, stiff arm in that game on a Monday night, I believe, right? A lot of great moments. And then we run into Arizona, who eventually went to the Super Bowl and lost. But great moment nonetheless, right? Jake Delhomme lost his mind, bunch of turnovers, and the rest is history. So then the next season, Jake comes back, but he gets hurt. And then we roll with Matt Moore. And like Cap and I talked about, Matt Moore rattled off a few wins at the end of the season. Got to be careful with that. What did we talk about that through? The perspective of Bryce Young. Hey, man, Bryce Young looked great, no doubt. But you got to be real careful with what you saw at the end of the season, because sometimes even I can get a little bit too hyper because I'm old enough to remember Matt Moore going on a little bit of a run going into the next season. And then Matt Moore gets hurt, and that's how we end up at 2-14. So Smitty's context is equally as important, right? Because when I get called a loser, I have to go back because look, it was a blanket statement. You might have been talking about like, look, bro, you might have been talking about Legadoo Nene. You know what I'm saying? You could have been talking about any of these other guys out here that you were in more closer contact with. You ain't talking about me. Can't be. Because, buddy, I was a part of two teams that did something that we ain't done in nobody's era since I've been here. Going to 2 NFC championship games in 3 seasons and then winning a Triple Crown the season, or that same season, right? I went to the playoffs 3 times. So did you. Salute. But didn't get back to the big games. But once. Only got there one time, right? So I got context too. When I look back at what we've done prior, and look, here's the crazier thing. We didn't have no number 1 pick quarterback. We had a cast off. Do y'all understand in this NFL, let's just say that you compared the Panthers of yesteryear, those 03 through 2009 Panthers, to the NFL right now. We basically did, and this is the equal comp, we did 1 Super Bowl appearance, 2 NFC championship appearances, 3 playoff appearances, and some 8-8 seasons with Kirk Cousins. Because that would be Jake Delhomme's comp in this NFL. We didn't do that with Pat. We didn't do that with CJ. We didn't do it with Bryce or Jalen or anybody else. We did that with Kurt. Because that would be the comp. The closest one anyway. Actually, I'll go a step further. I wouldn't even say Kurt. Because if I'm not mistaken, Jake was undrafted. We did that with Gardner Minshew. If we really, if we talking about the equals of how your pathway to the NFL, we caught lightning in a bottle the year you came over with Gardner Minshew, right? So part of what you got to in a 12-4 season was some of the mentality of some of those guys who were on those previous teams that brought that up and their level of play up, in addition to having you playing at your greatest level. Because when we were 1-3, who was on the hot seat? Leslie and Ron. So that would be my context from my perspective if I'm Smitty. Hey, bro, I got just as much of that mentality in me because I got it out the mud. So did you. You're superhuman, right? So, yeah, it's hard for you to come here to this situation, but the whole goal of you being here was to eventually get us to where we finally got to, which is why I say I'm split. Hey, look, if it's Nene or whoever, and I ain't trying to shoot at Nene, but if whoever it is, man, I ain't trying to hear about your Miami trips, but I guarantee you run the gamut of some of those people that responded to this video that's been circling out here, it ain't them guys, because they know what it took. They did it twice, right? Did it 3 times as far as playoffs is concerned. And then eventually some of them guys, well, I don't think any of those guys were part of the 15-1 season, but it led to that. Their presence at one point led to it. So